Good evening, everyone. How are you? This is Vahan Kostanyan, an engineer, and my beautiful wife.
Dr. Anush Kostanyan.
And this is our handsome son,
Baby V.
Baby V. We're actually here to talk to you about home birth, and I'm going to go ahead and let my wife kick us off.
So clearly we needed a couple months, or maybe I needed a couple months just to gather my thoughts to make this video, but we've been planning to do this since I was pregnant, and baby V is now over 5 months old. So now that the fourth trimester is over and we are beyond that, we're ready to share with you guys our awesome experience. So the reason why we wanted to make this video, actually, just to give you some background, is that when I started out on this journey, I did look for testimonials and everything on YouTube, and I realized how difficult it was to find home birth testimonies from first-time moms. A lot of the videos that I found were like, this is my fourth pregnancy, this is my seventh home birth, and I was like, well, what about first birth? That's usually like the scariest, they say can be the most difficult, the longest labor. So here we are. I want to share with you our out of hospital birth experience.
Doing good, babe. You're doing good. We're doing the home birth. Just get comfortable.
How did it all begin? In the beginning, I started with I don't know if we should call it traditional, but the more modern route, the typical with the obstetrician. I had an OB. They were great. I loved the group. Everything was going well. We didn't have any problems per se, but I knew that a more natural approach is what I always wanted. And just to give a little bit of my background, I went to nursing school for undergraduate, and I had, classmates who wanted to go into midwifery. So I did maternity rotation. I watched a birth, cesarean, vaginal, and, so I was exposed to this. And what really transformed my thinking about birth was the film I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, The Business of Being Born, which I didn't realize how old it was until I wanted to watch it again. But I watched it back in undergrad years ago, almost a decade, and it basically just discusses, maybe you guys should just watch it and find out for yourself. And then it inspired me to write my undergrad thesis on interventions during childbirth. Basically about like how this cascade of interventions while in an acute care setting, a lot of times, unfortunately, if it's unnecessary, can lead to a very unnatural birth. And we don't want to do anything that's unnecessary, right? So really, I was just praying about it, and I said, you know what, let's see what my husband thinks. So I had my husband watch The Business of Being Born. And I thought he was going to be so weirded out because it's, it shows women giving birth, and he's like not into, blood or anything like that. But surprisingly, he, reacted sort of positively to it. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. It was a great show. It was a good explanation. Again, I came from the understanding of you go to the doctor to give birth, and that's pretty standard. Outside of going to a doctor, you're an extremist, or you're like, whoa, you're way out there. And again, like we have insurance, we have health insurance. So for me, it's like, I was like, we've done 2 trimesters and we've done everything by the books according to the doctors. And now you want to change your mind like right before the 3rd trimester. And I was like, you know what, if that's what you're feeling, and you're strongly feeling this way, then we'll look into it. And she started interviewing midwives. So I'm sure you have to get into all the different midwives and why you picked the one we picked versus going through a doctor and going through one that's in the hospital. And again, I didn't even know what a doula was or a midwife. I thought it was a second wife. So I was like, oh, what? So
yeah. So what I didn't even realize was that not all providers are created equally, right? They may have similar training, but they go down different paths and they practice differently. So before the third trimester, I set out to interview midwives in our area. And it is a very densely populated area that we live in. And I was actually very surprised to have difficulty finding a couple midwives. So really, I only ended up interviewing like 2 because there weren't many more. And of course, coming from my background, I wanted a CNM, certified nurse midwife, somebody who, had the proper education and background and as a nurse practitioner license, like myself. So the first midwife that we interviewed was part of a hospital network. And of course, you have to have a collaborating physician in the state where we live. And, she seemed wonderful, but the only option that they offered was an in-hospital birth. And we asked about, what were the different questions that you were asking? Because you were really advocating for me a lot at the appointment.
How long does this take? What if the baby doesn't come out per your timeline that you're putting out? And they explained, once you come in, we have a 24-hour timeline. In 1 hour, if there's no progress, then we'll progress it ourselves to ensure that the baby's out. And after I watched the movie, it made me really think about, like, this is a natural occurrence. Like, why are we producing medicine that makes the baby freak out inside, the mother's womb in order to come out faster? So there was a lot of things. And then it was under the doctor's supervision was the one that we were looking at. And they said, oh, yeah, well, you're in the hospital, but you can't give birth inside the tub. You can only give birth by bedside. So you could be in the water
during labor. But then you have to get out.
Right. So they made it sound like it's a water birth, but really it's a standard birth. And then the doctor is actually telling you, when you're coming in, what's going on. And she pretty much told us, like, in 1 hour, if we don't see, an additional centimeter, then we're going to, any more dilation, then we're just going to go ahead and proceed with our way of getting it done. And I was like, okay. So that kind of turned my wife off.
You also asked, are we allowed to eat and drink?
Oh, yes. Like, are you allowed to eat and drink? The answer was no, you cannot. Once you come into the hospital, you can't do anything. You're under our care. And, just a lot of differences between going to the hospital and doing it in the house. Again, I came from hospital. Everything that I've known, all my family members, I visited them in the hospital after birth. So baby is excited that we're talking about his birth. So we ended up finding.
I just searched on the internet and I came across a pretty large midwifery practice. I think they do the most out of hospital delivery or most deliveries for a midwifery group in the state, I believe. And what really attracted me about them, besides all being CNMs, was that they gave me 3 options how to give birth, or where to give birth, rather. They have privileges at a hospital. They also have privileges at more than one birthing center. And also, of course, if you're eligible, you have the option to have a home birth, and if you're within their vicinity, however many miles from their practice. So I was really praying about it, and some things happened when we went to the appointment that really just was an answer to prayer, and I just knew immediately that these are the providers that I was supposed to be with. So, of course, in order to have a home birth, every midwifery practice is different. I've watched a lot of podcasts. There are some midwives and physicians who do home births for like moderate to high risk women, but I don't think the practice that I went to does that. It was more for low risk, which is, thank God, I was low risk, and they said okay to do home birth, even though our house was, I think, an hour away. from where they are. So we were grateful to be able to have that opportunity. And then we proceeded to make a birth plan. I actually, it's not on my fridge anymore, man. Maybe we will show a copy of the birth plan.
Maybe take a picture. Yeah, we'll show it here. Okay, and you guys can pause. But at any rate, all right, keep going.
So this is what my birth plan looked like. You guys can take a look. But basically, I wrote my 3 goals. Some important information for them to know during labor, what I prefer. Like, I wanted a quiet, calm environment. I don't really like much talking. I don't like unnecessary touching. Who I want to be in the house. That I didn't really want many vaginal checks. No membrane sweeping. I said that we were going to film the birth underwater, just so that they're not shocked, and be ready for some footage, because we're going to insert a little bit of the video for you guys to see. Different pain relief and comfort measures that you want. We did end up doing a water birth, which was so amazing, and it really helped relieve some of the pressure. There's in case of emergency, where you want to go, where you would want the baby to go, an emergency contact, and different things about the baby's care. If you don't want the baby to be washed immediately, which I did not, who's going to cut the umbilical cord? Do you want the eye ointment or the oral vitamin K? So these are all things that would be written in the birth plan, which I think is very useful to decide ahead of time. And yes, I do have a little binder here. I like to be organized, so I had my pelvic floor exercises and my midwifery practice. Gave little booklets, so we were nice and organized. So, is there anything else you want to say before we move on?
From what?
Moving on to how I prepared for the birth.
Yeah, I guess typically when you do a home birth, you should sign up with the midwifery for the first trimester and second trimester, and then the third. We were kind of a little different, where we started out as traditional OBGYN, and then my wife decided quickly that she, when I say quickly, second trimester, close to third, she said, I want to switch to give a natural birth. And I said, okay. So I guess if the sooner the better, just because the checks with the midwife is important, and it helps you build that relationship with you and the other ladies there, or whoever's working.
Yeah, a lot of people, like a lot of my girlfriends, did ask me the questions like, oh, well, they're not physicians, can they do this, can they do that? The midwives can do everything. They can run all the tests, they collect the blood work, they do the smears, GBS swab, they do bedside, basic ultrasounds to see what position the baby's in, obviously heart rate, Doppler and everything. So, there's nothing to worry about in terms of their qualifications. And of course, again, collaborating physician, they know their limitations. If it's something, an emergency or high risk that has to be delegated, or if they believe that the patient is safer giving birth in a hospital setting because there's more emergency services, then that's okay. That's why I really loved being part of a practice who had those options. And shout out to those hospitals out there who give privileges to midwives, because I know not all hospitals do. So that's good. Just a couple of ways that I prepared for the birth. So obviously prenatal vitamin, trying to keep a good diet. Another supplement besides prenatal that I really got into was beef organs. For those of you who eat beef organs, that's the best, but I could just never get myself to stomach it. So I was able to take supplements for it. And we can put a link for this. There's like a mini documentary on YouTube called Nourished, which was very educational for me. So I did the whole red raspberry leaf tea. I did some light stretches and toning. I did the spinning babies, and a YouTube channel that I love, very informative. Woman who does it called Pregnancy and Postpartum TV, and I still do her workouts postpartum. Very, very helpful. There's also, besides physical preparation, of course, there's mental preparation. You just need so much mental strength to dig deep, to have a pain medication free labor and delivery. So one of the ways that I mentally prepared was with Christian hypnobirthing. There's an app out there for Christian hypnobirthing. And I highly recommend it. It just really helps you get in the zone, and it's good to practice that complete relaxation and meditation months prior to giving birth, because it's training, right? It's almost like running a marathon. And of course, if you are part of a midwifery practice, they should have a home birth class, which I attended. And you came with me.
Once or twice, and then
Yeah. So a lot of this is self-education, because they're, especially if it's your first time around, or if you don't have like an older sibling or a close cousin or somebody who gave birth, you really have to look into it yourself. You have to do a lot of self-education. And what a book that we read was Natural Childbirth the Bradley Way by Susan McCutcheon, and she really trains you how to just completely relax your whole body, every single muscle, even like your jaw, your tongue, your fingertips, your toes, and to do that at rest, because it's much harder to do it when you're in the discomfort of contractions. And it really involves the husband in coaching, which I think is excellent.
So I had the opportunity of reading this Bradley method, and I will admit that it's very informative, but there are parts that have nothing to do with the men. So my suggestion,
maybe skip the first couple chapters.
My suggestion is just, I guess, get to the part where the man has the coaching part. Yeah, that's where the man has to listen, because the rest of it's just a lot of things for you guys as the birthers and the giving of birth, whereas the coach just kind of has to listen to the 1 or 2 chapters, as I recall. But yeah, just save your husband some time, because there's a lot going on in his mind as well.
Or if it's not your husband, it can be like a partner, mom, or sibling, mom, somebody who want to be coaching you during the delivery. So another thing that we watched was a National Geographic documentary called In the Womb. It was beautiful. I think it just helped give you an appreciation of just the beautiful creation and the way there's just this miracle of forming like an embryo, zygote, how it becomes this fetus and this infant. It's just very beautiful. For those of you who want research-based information, which should be all of you, there's an evidence-based birth YouTube channel and website. It's by a nurse, PhD nurse, and she just has unbiased information there that's strictly based on research, and I highly recommend looking into her. She has a page about, the eye ointment, the vitamin K injection, and a bunch of different things. And a lot of like pregnancy nutrition, home birth podcasts by a YouTube channel by the real Alex Clark called The Spillover. I think she has like a rebranding now, so you can just look up the real Alex Clark. And she does a podcast which is amazing for Christian conservative women with a bunch of different topics and guest speakers. So at 36 weeks, other physical prep that I did was a gentle birth tincture, alfalfa. I did magnesium, and I'll show you guys all these things. Okay, so just to show you guys, somebody recommended this in a video that I watched, gentle birth tincture.
It should be noted that we're not sponsored by any of these companies, and we are not making any medical advice. It's for you to discuss with your medical provider, and also, again, we're not making any money off of any of this.
Yes, I am a medical provider, but I'm not your medical provider, so definitely check with yours. I was getting a lot of like leg cramps, and some people may struggle with constipation, so magnesium is good for that. Some vitamin K to help, prevent any bleeding or postpartum hemorrhage. Alfalfa supplementation. and this was the beef organs supplement that we both actually started taking. So another way that I prepared mentally was, thankfully in our state, we're able to take maternity leave 4 weeks prior to starting work. And I 100% recommend that to everyone because, again, you don't know if you're going to have the full 4 weeks. For me, I had 3 weeks, and even that was barely enough for me to just, organize everything, to nest. If you have a very busy job, I fully recommend taking those 4 weeks off just to prepare. Yeah. Now we move on to the actual labor.
Yeah. So
of course it was my first ever time being pregnant, so I've never gone into labor before. I had all the knowledge in my head, but my body doesn't know how it feels. So I was having some contractions for a couple days. I remember the week prior we drove to the beach, and I didn't even know if I would make it to the beach because each bump on the highway, I thought I was going to give birth that night. But little did I know, they were just Braxton Hicks. I even went to a work event the day before giving birth, which was a couple days later. So long story short, baby V arrived at 39 weeks. My labor was about 24 hours long. Early in my labor, I was very careful about conserving energy, so I tried to stay in bed as long as possible. I did take some oral Tylenol, which is fine. When I asked the midwives if I can take Tylenol, they just laughed. They're like, sure, you could try it, but it might not help that much. I was recommended to take Benadryl just to help you sleep through the contractions, just again to conserve energy for when you really need the energy later on. But I don't really recommend it because I think it made me just feel too drowsy and dry, which is what antihistamines do. So I wouldn't do the Benadryl. You might want to try some wine. Some people are okay with that. Just a little bit. I don't know how much is recommended. You can, ask your own provider. So the Benadryl is something I didn't like, and the TENS unit is something that I didn't like. We were able to borrow one from my pain management nurse practitioner friend. But I think we just did the wrong setting. I put it on my lower back. My husband was trying to help me. Bless his soul. It made it, I think, a lot worse. It was just contracting my back muscles, and it was bad. So maybe ask your physical therapist or your pain provider before trying that. So it seemed like my contractions were taking too long, right? Or I think they were too far apart. And I was just in pain. I was like, come on, let's get this going. So my midwives called and recommended that I take castor oil, which for some reason I didn't even think castor oil was something that you ingest. I thought it was a topical thing. I don't know. But because it tastes so nasty. You want to go pick some up, remember?
Yeah, I went to the store to pick some up, yeah.
With orange juice?
Yes.
Yeah. So they gave me the ratio, how much OJ to how much castor oil, I don't remember. But basically it was a natural induction method. Instead of giving Pitocin in the hospital, just give castor oil. So what it does is cause uterine cramping, but it also causes intestinal cramping. You know what that means? Your intestines will be emptied out by the time that baby comes out, which actually was a good thing. So you will be in the, on the toilet for a little bit, but it ended up, working out in our favor. So who showed up to our house?
When you started going into your 1 minute apart.
Yeah, so at this point we were texting the midwife and the midwife assistant back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever they decided that it was a good time for them to come, one midwife showed up with the midwife assistant, and they helped me the rest of the way. They were monitoring me. They helped move me. They helped, give me some counter pressure on my low back. We went into the shower just, to help me relax in the hot water. We can show a picture. We used the Cub, CUB. It's this round, inflatable.
The midwife that you choose more than likely will have this device. It's an air bag. It's basically like a seat made out of air in a plastic bag. It's the best way to describe it, but it looks like the U shape, and it will support your weight.
Yeah, you can sit on it, lean over it. And something else that they asked me to do was to sit the opposite way on the toilet, so facing the tank. And, I just leaned over the tank. And I think just that position helped a lot. It was a lot of people say that it's comforting during labor to sit on the toilet, but you can't stay there because it's not a good place to give birth.
All right, so we're we're talking about what the spouse or helper or friend or birthing partner is supposed to do at this point.
Yeah.
If you're doing a home birth and you're going to do it in a tub, you must start filling up the tub. So as the midwife, you call the midwife, you let them know, and they'll say, okay, start filling it up. And typically they're going to say, okay, like they have a package where you buy the hose, you buy the adapter, it's a 25-foot hose. You inflate this thing with an air pump. It's 3 layers high. It's like a mini hot tub that you put in your living room. We'll show a picture of that probably like right after I mention it. You guys can pause on it. And then what we did was we filled up hot water. So you got to make sure that your hot water heater can handle how much hot water you're going to be dumping out. So you might want to crank up, if you know that your wife's going to go in labor, you might want to crank up your water heater to a higher setting because we had an older one at the time. So we had to turn ours up all the way. I emptied out the entire hot water heater. Now, just in case you run out of hot water, what they'll do is they'll go get a pasta pot, those big ones, and they'll fill that up with water, put it on your stove and boil water and throw boiling water into the tub. Again, by the time she's getting into the tub, she's already getting ready to have the baby. So the water cools down quite quickly. And that's why you're putting in very hot water in the beginning, but it continues to just decrease in temperature. So don't be nervous if it's like very hot in the beginning, over 100 degrees, because it will steadily start to drop and get to the point where she can enter the tub. Now we will say that during labor, she didn't mention, but she made mommy sticks. What were they? Popsicle sticks?
Oh, yeah. But one second, before we get into that, I just wanted to mention about the tub and everything. So there's some prep that has to be done, and you have to review it with your partner ahead of time. What did you put under the tub? Is there like a tarp and towels? And
yeah, and that typically comes with the set that the midwife will suggest. But yeah, you want to get those like $1 picnic tables from a dollar store, and you want to flip it over to the opposite side, tablecloth, so the slick side down and the felt side up. And what that does is any water that drops onto, doesn't get onto your wooden floors or carpet, any blood or anything like that. So I think we had like 5 of those, and they suggested like 20 towels to prepare. We didn't have 20 of the same towels. We just had 20 random towels. And I would say
really we only used like 2 or 3. It's just
I think it's just there.
Yeah, just in case.
And they want to have a clear area. So our clear area, I want to say, was a 5 by 5, and then we had it able for the housewife to walk around 3 sides of the tub. That's what I said.
You said housewife.
You see what I mean? I still don't even know what they are.
None of those in this house.
Yes, I'm sorry. Midwives. So you have to be accessible by 3 sides. So it worked out for us that they were able to walk around it. We did have to move furniture, move a coffee table, move a couch, move a chair. So yeah, I mean, these are things to think about. It's not like the end of the world, but they just do want you prepared. So the only thing that you're thinking of is breathing techniques, and the other person like me is worried about everything else. So when I say worried, you're really like helping. So I was actually a part of the labor, and I was taking instruction from the doula. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
And the doula was, kind of told me, hey, put pressure here. And then the doula would, walk away and say, okay, We have, step with your alternate leg up one way, breathe 5 times this way, switch, put your foot up on the
Lunge,
step, lunge,
squat.
squat. Just a lot of different techniques. And you're there just to kind of stay positive, let her know things are going great, get water. Make sure she has sugar. When I say sugar,
Yeah, so
unless I missed something again with the
so there's a cute picture of me in the tub and my husband giving me like a ice cream pop kind of thing that I made. They were, what were we calling them? What was it? Lactate? No, not lactation.
Mommy pops.
Labor pops.
Labor pops.
What was it?
That was
something
it,
like that. So basically, it's just a drink, like an electrolyte drink. Labor Aid. Ice pops.
Labor Aid.
Yeah. So basically an electrolyte drink with some like blended, frozen fruit in there. Just something to give you a little like rush of energy, and honey, just because, you're not going to have an appetite to eat, but you do need calories, right? So I was recommended actually to carb load the day before, again, like running a marathon. So they were like, yeah, the day before you can eat like a big bowl of pasta. So carb loading, and throughout labor, I was allowed to eat and drink. Not really that I wanted to eat, but I did nibble, just on crackers, pretzels, Labor Aid pops, a lot of water. I wanted just everything cold and icy. And during the birth, in the house, I wanted everything to be calm, lights off. We had electric candles, we had fairy lights. So just prepare the environment for what makes you comfortable. That's the whole point of doing it at home.
We did our TV into a fireplace with the crackling sound. So, again, it was very much opposite from being in white, sterile light environment.
No beeping. No stranger, like students walking into the room.
Yeah.
I was once a student too, so I'm not hating on that, but it's just, if you prefer a more private environment, this is the way to go.
Yeah, and actually, like now that I've experienced it, and again, we'll talk about it at the end, but now that I've experienced it, I want to recommend it to all women. And now that I've seen like how a lot of the things that women are scared of, like the baby being the wrong way, the baby being twisted, potential bleeding, all these things, I don't know the terms. She's the doctor. She'll explain all that. But the midwife has the ability to take care of most of those things before you have to go into a C-section. Before that's hey, go get a C-section. So, and again, I'm going to let her take it away again.
So again, this is why it's important to do your research and educate yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to say yes to everything that your provider tells you. And yes, your provider has made an oath to do no harm. We all do that when we graduate. But again, they just do what they know and what they've been trained to do, which may not necessarily be what's best for you or match your intuition, right? Like your mom gut, which now I'm learning to have. So just because, the baby's breech doesn't automatically mean, go to the operating room for a C-section. Sometimes it does, and that's okay, right? We just want a safe mom and a safe baby. But the labor and delivery experience is important too, right?
So, again, while she was in labor, when the midwife did come in, she did read her labor plan, the birthing plan. So that they were aware of everything that needed to happen. The crew was, 2 midwives, 1 doula, and the doula also helped with photography and videography. But I also had cameras set up as well, which again she noted that we'll be sharing some pictures and some images, which is going to be kind of cool.
Some people hire a birth photographer, which is pretty neat also. But we were lucky enough to have the doula take professional almost pictures for us, and we had cameras up all around too. And I have some scriptures on the wall, which actually are still on the wall. We'll show you some pictures of that. Whatever's encouraging for you.
Yeah. So when she did walk in, I did let her know that the closest hospital was 5 minutes away. I did let her know that the secondary option was 20 minutes away, and then the birthing center, where if my wife felt uncomfortable at the time of giving birth in the house, she could change her mind, and we can go to a birthing center that operates with the midwife, and she can continue to have the birth in water. That's the midwife continues to take control of the situation. It's not under doctor's care. And that's if there's no complication. But if there is complication, you go straight to the nearest hospital, and they'll tell you.
Yeah, so you review ahead of time what they can handle and what they escalate. They are able to do things like stitches. Oh, well, long story short, we'll get to the postpartum period. So baby V, after 24 hours of labor and 2 hours of pushing, arrived underwater. It was pretty incredible because my water never broke. So you can see, actually, I don't know if we'll put that footage here because, it's quite graphic and personal, but we did record it. He was born with the amniotic sac still intact. So as his head was coming out, the sac filled with fluid is actually surrounding his head still, which was very neat. And the midwives even were surprised, and they asked me for my footage so they can train their residents how to do water births and things. So it was fascinating. The head came out first, and I didn't feel an urge to push for like 5 minutes, and the head was just chilling underwater. He didn't start breathing. It was completely fine. And then when I pushed, the shoulders out, part of my birth plan was that I wanted to pull him out of the water, and they respected that. So I just reached right down there. It's the benefit of not having the epidural, not being drugged up, that you can actually like hold your baby, pull him out. So pulled him out, immediate skin to skin. He was super blue, but they kept, of course, the placenta. They didn't rush. They didn't tug or pull. It came out after a couple minutes. They didn't clamp early. We got a really cool picture that will show you of the placenta still connected to the baby. They allow all the blood to drain before clamping and cutting. Mm-hmm. And, research has shown a lot of benefits in that.
I believe that's it's called delayed cutting, right?
Delayed cord clamping. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it prevents anemia in the child, and it has a lot of other benefits. Yeah, so postpartum, we were saying, and you have the option of what to do with your own placenta. You don't have to give it up to the biohazard, waste department of the hospital. So, you packed up my placenta, right? Mm-hmm. In
2-gallon bag. Yep.
They're in Ziploc bags in my freezer currently downstairs. We didn't decide what to do with it, but there are different options. Apparently, you can blend them into a smoothie. You can encapsulate it, send it to a company that can powderize it, and you can take it as supplements. But they usually don't recommend it immediate postpartum. I think you should wait a couple weeks because of the hormone fluctuations.
And again, that's not.
It's an option.
Yeah, it's not something that we're pushing at all. Just we thought about keeping the placenta and figuring out what we want to do from there. What else would we say?
Just the personal decisions that I made, and you're free to research on your own, like the website that I gave about evidence-based medicine. I decided to not give the vitamin K injection. I think there is a version without preservatives, but again, I did not want any injections immediately after birth, so I opted for the oral formulation, which actually was very difficult to find. I think they use it in Europe. There's no FDA approved one in the States, but I found one online from Dr. Green Mom. She has a lot of different, I don't know if they're called holistic, homeopathic. I don't want to use the wrong lingo, but she has a lot of different products on there you can check out. And we did do the erythromycin ophthalmic ointment. And after he was born, he latched immediately. But again, breastfeeding is not... I learned a lot about breastfeeding. Still breastfeeding. 5 months in, I plan to do it as long as possible, and I'll let the baby wean himself when the time comes. But what I do recommend for out-of-hospital births is 100% to have a consultation with a board certified lactation consultant, because his initial latch was great, but after that, extreme toe curling pain, which I didn't know was abnormal. I thought it was just the way it's supposed to be. And basically I had very terrible nipple ulcers on both sides, and it was so I think I almost had PTSD every time I had to breastfeed him, which was every 2 hours for the first couple months. So look into your state law. I think it's law now for insurances to cover lactation consultants. So they literally came to my house. It was a 2-hour consultation, and they do follow-ups. It was amazing. She saved my life. I don't know what I would have done. I would not be breastfeeding now, probably, if we didn't have that opportunity. Or you can pay out of pocket, which can be really pricey. We actually...
Yeah, it's about $300, I think, and they're about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and when the baby's not eating and mom is upset, you don't care what it costs, just have them show up. And we had somebody show up. I'm glad we went through. Again, there's a lot of things, as she mentioned, with lactation. I'm not a lactation expert. I would believe Baby V is at this point with how much milk he's been drinking. But I will say that each lactation consultant is a little different on what they suggest. So the one that you picked happened to be certified in something very interesting.
IBCLC is a certification that they have. And again, I'm big on certifications because I worked hard on my education, and I respect it when other people do as well. So she was wonderful. She actually even evaluated our baby. It turned out that he had a tongue tie. Again, not all tongue ties lead to latch issues or need to be corrected, but his did. So we got a frenotomy, and after a couple weeks, things were wonderful, thankfully. But I do recommend for everybody, while you're pregnant, don't wait until you give birth like me. Read the book or listen to the audiobook, The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding. And it's done by the La Leche League International. So now that we did postpartum,
there's a lot of things that you don't know. So again, this is our first baby right here, Baby V, Baby V, right here. So when Baby V came out, it is the best feeling of your life, but there are things that you don't know. He wants his mommy, so I'll take over right here. These are the things that I personally can speak to. So the difference between giving birth at home and the difference between giving birth in the hospital. When you are in the hospital, you get your birth certificate, Social Security, all that stuff. It's filed from the actual hospital. So they do the footprints, all that stuff. Everything is done there. When you do it at your house, regardless if you do it, in a pool, wherever, as long as it's not in the hospital or a center, you have to find out all this information yourself, which means you have to call the municipal office. Hey, I just had a home birth. I need to fill out some paperwork. My baby was this. Then you have to get the information from the midwife. The midwife has to certify that you just had a baby. Now you have to take it back. Then you have to file for your own Social Security number.
Well, fun fact, you don't have to name your kid for 10 days after they're born. So if you're indecisive like me, at least you have time. And you're not rushed to name him before you leave the hospital.
That's true. These are all true things. Again, the things that they don't tell you too is all the appointments that you need, the additional shots, the additional follow-up. So right after you have your baby, they take your weight. Boom. Okay. So then 3 days after, you have to set up a meeting with your pediatrician. You have to call. Hey, I just had a baby. We need to come in. Okay. Then you have to go in again on the 5th day. So in 1 week, you see the pediatrician twice. They're asking, what type of shots did you have? What did you opt in? What did you opt out of? Again, the pediatrician for the first month and a half, it's a lot. Oh, let me tell you too, when you have a baby boy, they actually ask you if you're getting the baby circumcised when you do it at your house. You could actually call somebody to your house and they will circumcise your child here. Some people do a party and they do a circumcision party. Other places you go to a facility. But if you do it in the hospital, they do it right on the spot. There is a timeline that you cannot pass, and a weight limit that the baby can't be higher than, or it makes
13 pounds.
13 pounds. Yeah, is what it was, or it's difficult for them to fit onto the board, and they have to use anesthesia or something like that in order for them to
and vitamin K shot is not mandatory.
Vitamin K is not. Yeah, some of them are not mandatory. Again, everything's just, it's a blur. But I'm telling you this because it's important for you to understand. Plus, let me tell you, you gotta contact your insurance company and let them know that you had the baby. Then you have to, you have 30 days to contact your insurance. But when I say that, mom is, doing mom things, which is barely sleeping, feeding, dad, you're probably wearing the same clothes as well. And, just be prepared. The cool thing about it is the church that we were going to actually put us in this meal train. And believe it or not, people stop by out of the goodness of their heart, and they brought us food. We're able to buy our own food. That's not the the case of it. It's more or less it's the time to make the food. That's the thing. I will say that that was a big lifesaver for me to have people from the church come by and actually talk to other humans instead of just a baby who's just crying a lot in the beginning. That's because he had a tongue tie and we didn't know. Again, we're not pushing any tongue tie procedures or anything like that. It helped for our baby. Once he had it, his weight went up. I actually have a tongue tie, and back in the day, they didn't have tongue ties. We just you lived with it, and I was still breastfed, so I'm completely fine. The lady asked me if she wanted to cut my tongue, and I said absolutely not. But other than that, yeah. So the things to expect as a father. Just be prepared. Make sure you take this time to be with your wife. I know a lot of the guys at work will tell you, and guys, I really or anybody who's with you, just really focus here. Work will always be there, but when your baby is this small, you want to be there. You want to be able to help your loved one. You want to be able to help with your brand new infant. You want this bonding time. And if you have the opportunity to take a week, take a week. If you have the opportunity to take 2 weeks, take 2 weeks. If you have the opportunity to take a month, take a month. If I did 2 weeks off, and then I did a week from home, and it was really helpful for my wife. So there's a lot of things that you're not thinking of. Now, let me tell you too, on the other side, the cool thing about having birth at the home is you're at home. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to put the baby inside of a car seat. You don't have to make sure the car seats fit properly. If you have trouble doing that, call your local police station or fire department, and they're certified to help you install that. But again, another thing I'm sure you don't know of. If you were to buy a used car seat, some people recommend buying used car seats. There's nothing against that, but you have to read behind the car seat. There's a date that says when it expires, and that kind of freaks you out, right? Like, now you have to think about expiration dates for safety equipment. So we had the baby at the house. Everything was good. You got to make
living room.
In the living room. It was beautiful. Everything inflates very well. You put the hose in the toilet, and then everything just goes right down, just like in the toilet. Everything deflates. There wasn't really a mess at all. We were left with a giant smile. My wife was at home. She slept so well.
The first night.
Just the first. Just the first.
And the midwives, they do a 24-hour visit.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like you're just left stranded.
And that's what's cool too. They do come back, and if you need them to stay, they'll stay. But we didn't need them to stay. She drove home. It was like an hour drive. Again, we were on the outskirts of how far they can go.
So now the $1 million question is what all of you guys have been wondering, I'm sure, is how much does it cost in a hospital birth versus out of hospital birth? And that is my husband's area of expertise, so I'll let him talk about that.
So in the hospital, it would have been covered fully because we have insurance, right? Out of the hospital and midwifery, our insurance, believe it or not, does not cover midwifery, whereas some insurances cover all midwifery and all midwifery practices. So it really depends on how much your insurance covers. It's
if they have out-of-network benefits.
That's correct. And what you do is you call them, you let them know. They'll let you know what it is going to be out of pocket, potentially, if there needs to be out of pocket. And then your midwifery will tell you what the potential cost may be if your insurance doesn't cover all of your out-of-pocket expenses, essentially.
Yeah. So a lot of them have payment plans available.
Right. And
so long story short, out-of-hospital births usually, in general, cost less than in-hospital births, of course, because hospitals are, big buildings that use very expensive equipment and everything, but how much it will cost the actual patient can vary widely. And even though I work for a hospital system and I would have paid 0 pennies for in-hospital birth, we did choose to pay out of pocket a couple pretty pennies, aka a couple $1,000, in order to have the birth experience that was important to us.
Again, in the end, I'm just happy that I was able to advocate for my wife. She was happy. I didn't want her to have any regrets. And I think that's the biggest thing to think about is what's right for her. She's the one who's carrying the baby. She's the one who's going to be, living with the decision. And I think you're just there to be supportive. So whoever's there in the support role, just listen, be supportive, do research, listen to the books, and ask questions. It's important to ask questions. And especially when you go to these midwifery things, I asked a bunch of questions in the beginning. And then I stopped going because I had all my questions answered. So it kind of worked out. So, yep. Alrighty. I'm proud of my wife for doing such a great job. I'm really pleased to say that, I witnessed my son's birth, but I also witnessed it in my living room. And
now we're never going to sell this house.
Yes. I guess we're not selling this house. But again, guys, there's just a lot that you need to think about. So you got to help, or whoever's helping out or coaching or being there for the mother, you need to think about all those things: birth certificate, social security number, passport, circumcision within 30 days of having the baby before it gets to 13 pounds. And again, it's an awesome thing. So just make sure you have support. If you do have little kids, they're actually encouraged to be there too. Just make sure you let them know that mom's going to be shouting a little bit, and it's not for the person that's there hurting her. It's because she's delivering your baby sibling. Thank you is the word. Yeah. So is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think for us, it was an incredible experience. We're grateful to have had, great providers to support us through the process. And I'm proud of my husband for, just being on board with what I wanted to do, because a lot of my girlfriends, or a lot of your friends too, were like, oh, I'd never let my wife do that. Or a lot of women were like, oh, I'd love to have had a home birth, but my husband would never have let me. And that was never, an issue for us. So of course,
yeah. And again, I'm an engineer, right? So I need to have the data to back up what's being said. And when my wife, brought these videos together for me to watch, to listen to, why it was important for her to have beef liver or organs from, cow for the placenta in order to be a healthy placenta versus a vegan placenta, night and day difference on all these things that it really helped me fully understand. And yeah, I mean, baby number 2, 3, 4,
would we do it again? Would we do it again?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So check, yes, and just make sure that you guys are prepared for the best time of your life with your new baby, whether it's in the hospital or at a home birth. If you have any questions, please just shoot a comment down below, or feel free to reach out to us. We will try to comment back or message us directly. We do live in the tri-state metropolitan New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area. So, there are tons of practices and tons of suggestions that can be made. And that's it. What else?
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. This is Vahan and Dr. Anush. We're signing out. And
Bye.
Baby V. Bye. Say bye, Baby V.